Walsh, and now I'm like addicted to it. Some of them Matt Walsh, more so Michael Knowles.
Well, you have some disclaimers too, probably.
Oh yeah, there's lots of curse words in here, and I'll just pretend like you're not in church, and that offends you for being in church. But anyway, not a lot of them.
Not a lot.
A few. Mary says, "Is this okay?" I'm like, "It's okay for our class."
Do you want to say why we're
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think. Y'all know, I've been saying this a lot lately. I kind of give a disclaimer before we teach lately. It's because why are we teaching what we're teaching? We did 9 weeks of I dare you not to bore me with the Bible. We're going to go back together. There's still plenty to mine there. But now we've taken a 3-week kind of hiatus into just these individual subjects that are building, last week being courage. And we talked about courage and what does courage really mean? What's the demanding? Are we demanded courage? So y'all, if you didn't check out last week, look at the YouTube page. Our Sunday school is at my name, Joel Travelstead. Meredith's stuff is at her name. But Sunday school is at my name. If you didn't see last week, check it out. But we're talking about courage and how courage is important and all that kind of stuff. And we said that's going to lead us into this, what is a woman? And I've been struggling lately because, I don't know, as I've said many times the last several weeks, we teach whatever God's showing us at the time. And it's frustrating. It's really frustrating because it's not, I don't know, these are subjects that I'm struggling with. And I don't like to teach them if I can't give you a practical answer, meaning how should a Christian operate this? And if I can't give you that, then all this is gossip. It's entertainment, it's gossip. Or it's, gossip's probably not the right word, it's Christian entertainment or something. And I stay away from that mess because it's frustrating. So I've been dealing with this probably for about 1.5 years, this whole idea of what is a woman, the LGBT stuff and the transgender stuff and the pronouns and the constant question your identity. But I haven't figured out until very recently, we're literally in the process. Meredith left, she's been on call, she left for the hospital. I get out of the shower and I grab my phone, I write 6 notes for next week. and what they are, it's what can a Christian actually do? If I can't give you something that says, as a Christian, I believe this, and this is how it works in my daily life, then I'm wasting your time. And I have not been able to figure this out until maybe now. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Where are we?
Did you want to say this?
Oh.
That you've had it for years?
I've had this book for years. Is that what I was supposed to say?
Yeah.
I've had this book for years. I love this book. It says, Why Men Hate Going to Church.
Has anybody ever heard of that book?
Anybody heard of this? And if you probably have seen it, this is an updated version that was just updated probably in the last couple of years. The original book that was passed around by all of y'all who know John Lewis, about 10 or 15 years ago, he decided this was every book that every human, especially man, used to read. So he bought like 700 of them and passed them out to people. But they looked different. They were smaller. They had a white background. And this man in that tie, the picture was a man thrown over a pew with his hands like this, looks like exasperated with a big red tie. So it was that man, but a whole. So if you saw that book, this is the same book, just updated.
I have to say, I'm a mother of 3 boys. I live in a fraternity house, and I was reading this, especially the part where the young boys.
Was she immediately, tell them why you went to that
like,
chapter. You just,
I'm going to see why boys
I've
leave
talked
the
about it
faith.
for so long.
Yeah, why Joel talked about it for so long. How churches drive boys away from the faith. And I was like, oh my goodness.
These
yes,
are our children.
This is it.
So she's all a believer now after reading one chapter.
One chapter.
So we're going to share a little bit of that with y'all today and then probably more next week. So why men hate church. And you'll see why that's all a part of this. What is a woman? What is a man? What's left is this? Why are Christians so ineffective in having this whole communication?
Boy moms.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's get started. What is a man? What is a woman? And that is not an arc here in the notes. That is an actual cue, which means you have to answer. So what's your answer? Come on, and what's a man? What's a woman? For those of you who watch Michael Gold, don't give his answer. We're about to show you his 1-sentence answer. Anybody really? Now, all kidding aside, no. What do we just generally? How do we define men and women? Throw it out there. Physical. I heard the XY chromosomes. It's usually a physical nature. Give me some attributes that we define. That's why I've been struggling so much about how to teach this, because this is based off of Michael Knowles giving me a theoretical construct on how to approach it. there's so many different levels happening on here. You've got biology, you've got chromosome, which is part of biology, you've got biology, then you do have cultural norms, and then all that gets mushed up in our culture. What's the difference between a cultural norm and how I demand that a man act versus what is really a man? How I demand that a woman act. Man, there's multiple layers, and you don't, as Christians who haven't thought deeply about this subject, we tend to just mush it all together. It gets confusing. It's a whole lot easier just to ignore it, get back in our church, sing our hymns, close the door, and hope everybody else doesn't go to hell. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. And it's because it's frustrating, and that's why I haven't taught this for a while. I'm looking for a intellectual and theological construct for how to talk about it. That's what I'm trying to work out. So anyway, I heard physical stuff. Give me some attributes of a woman. Feminine, be specific. Attributes of a woman. This is not hard.
Physically weaker.
Physically, physically weaker. That's interesting because we talked about courage last week, and we're going to talk about, maybe next week, is courage a male attribute or a female attribute? What do you think it, what, off the top of your head, what you said, courage is a male attribute. That's kind of what we think of.
Emotionally, more emotional.
Women, or you mean some men? No. Women do.
Most women have.
Usually more emotional. Any other?
Women can multitask. Nobody's business.
Women can
Man
multi-
cannot multitask.
That is very-
I believe
where
in
did
also
that
that
go?
left, right, right brain.
Yep, where did it go?
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Women are of this like physically very.
That's funny you say that. Well, I'll get off into individual stuff more. But you're, I probably do, I don't know if that's the right way to say, Mary's on the phone, I can say this now, she's on the phone out there. Oh, fresh, she's back, fine. I'm gonna just leave that. She made the comment that generally women can multitask a lot better than men. And I would say that's, at least for me, and that's anecdotal. That's probably true. I would argue from I didn't want to say this with her in here, sure. I would argue that I can accomplish more than Meredith in the same amount of time. You would agree with that? But it's not because I multitask, you're right. It's because what a man typically does is hyper-focuses one at a time. And because I do it that way, for me, and the fact that my son tells me I'm a triple mover, as you can tell by how fast I'm talking right now.
That's right.
So, and that's
more
just,
personality.
yeah, that's more personality. All right, I better go
A
ahead.
little more nurturing.
Women more nurturing, women are a little bit physically weaker, and these are all in general. Probably more multitask versus individual tasks. Anything else? I'm just asking what
Come
our
on, I need
feminine
some
is.
testosterone.
How about some men attributes? Give me an attribute of a man.
Men are more direct.
Men are more direct. Give me some more. What's the attribute of men?
Stronger.
The opposite. They're stronger typically. They're bigger. The average man's gonna be able to lift more weights, move more stuff, so on.
Not generally able to have children.
Yes, not generally able to have children. Very true. Not generally able to have children. Very good.
They're leaders. I mean, I think they're
Leaders. Interesting. Leaders. Interesting.
Not everybody will have.
All right. So you guys have this. You can go from attributes. You can go from biology. Obviously, you can have some biblical answers. There's a lot of. You can go from sociological answers, society. You hear so much in the woke and the in just the more liberal woke side, this idea of social constructs. And at first, the average Christian reacts to that like, no, that's not true. The more I think about it, and Michael Knowles has helped me think about it this way, I need to get to the details, because right now I'm just talking at such a high level that you're not really following me, but I think a lot of what we define as a man and woman is a social construct. So quit fighting that battle. You say, yep, it is. We expect men to act a certain way. We expect women, and in this culture, that's what we do. That's the problem is we as Christians react visceral to that. The truth is, it's true. So the question is it the right social construct? Quit fighting the battle whether it's a social construct or not. The question is it the right social construct, and what is best for humanity and our culture and our society and the propagation and education of our children? That's the right question. Not whether it is a social construct or not. It's which one is right. Okay.
all right.
I'm all over the place, y'all.
7 to ears. 7 to ears.
Okay. What did you say?
Some little ears.
We're going to ask two questions. To ask these two questions seems absurd. What is wrong with a culture that is confused on such a fundamental level? Let's listen to some of this. Yes, there's some vulgarity in here.
talk show, I give speeches, I write books. I like to make sense of things. A woman is not anything in particular.
There is not one particular name.
It could be many things to many people.
Some women have penises, right? Some men have vaginas.
I like scented candles. I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah,
How do I know if I'm a woman?
that's a great question.
You're not a scientist. You're not a gender studies major.
No,
How do you know that you're a man?
I guess because I got a dick.
Sorry,
Can a man become a woman?
I can't really answer that.
Women only know what women are.
Are you a cat?
No?
Can you tell me what a cat is? You want to tell us what a woman is?
I'm a biological woman that medically transitioned to appear like a male. I will never be a man.
So they go on the internet and they're told that all their problems will be solved if they become a man.
So you worry that there could be a sort of social contagion element to this?
A teeny tiny bit, maybe.
It got me at 42. Your child doesn't have a chance.
You're affirming it with hormones that have never been used in this way.
Puberty blockers, which are completely reversible. Completely reversible.
One of the drugs used is Lupron, right? Which has actually been used to chemically castrate sex offenders.
You know what? I'm not sure that we should continue with this interview.
You don't want to talk about the drugs that you give to kids or...
How can they be removing the healthy breasts of 15-year-old girls?
There are masculine girls. There are feminine boys. What do we do about that? Carve them up?
How can this whole thing be happening, Matt?
I wanted us to have a safe place to be able to talk about this.
Part of me wants to ask why you care so much.
I care about the truth. I care about children. I care about the women who are having their opportunities stolen from them.
Is it transphobic to tell the truth?
Maybe so self-development.
Excuse me,
I just want to know what was wanted.
I'm not gonna find out.
Based on what I'm saying, would you ever want to move to America?
They say no. Never.
Anybody in the room seen that full documentary? Okay. So that we just thought we'd play the plan. Now we're going to play a second trailer, which is a little softer, not quite as obnoxious, or as not obnoxious at all, or not quite as anyways.
The question really brings up the fact that it is pretty relative, right? That if you ask women across race, across identities, across class, across culture, you will get a different answer.
Some of it is, based on biology, some of it is based on hormones, some of it is based on what you wear and how you present yourself.
A woman is not anything in particular. There's no one particular thing.
There is not one particular thing.
A woman is someone who says that she is a woman and transitions to be a
Who
woman.
says that she's what? Can you define the word woman without using the word woman?
It's actually kind of like, it's a curious question, but
We've been journeying across the country asking people this question, and almost nobody can answer it.
I love this.
What is a woman?
What is a woman?
Marry one and find out.
So I should go home and ask my wife, I guess.
Yeah.
I love Jordan Peterson.
Hey, I've been meaning to ask you something.
Uh-huh.
What is a woman?
An adult human female who needs help opening this.
So there's your sociological, spiritual, and every other level question. What is a woman? And if you watch that whole video, most of who he's talking to are, I don't know, well, now he'd never get in the door. I guess back then he was under the radar screen.
Yeah,
But
really.
these are professors at Harvard and Yale and psychology. That's who he's talking to, who think he's there because he agrees with them, apparently. And then at some point in the interviews, when they figure out he doesn't, that's when they storm out most of the time, or some of the time. It's quite funny. So anyway, that's what that's about. If you want to see it, check it out. We've watched it. It really is interesting. Okay. So, Michael Knowles' journey to discover. These are shorts. Now, this is Michael Knowles, he's going down the same journey. What is a woman? We're going to show a lot more of him next week. He does a beautiful theological job of why it matters. We're going to talk about that next week. What'd you do?
Sorry.
One thing that's a man, I've talked to y'all before, women don't touch controls. Y'all know this? She knows this.
Yeah, that's true.
There it is.
I have a simple question. What is a woman?
A woman is an adult female human being. I mean, we solved it. We did it. We did it. Wow. Wow. That's all it took. Walsh could have cut 89 minutes out of his movie. That would have been so easy.
I have a simple.
Okay, that's just quick.
Here's another little short.
Men's masculinity and virility comes from their nature as men.
But you don't think it comes from marriage?
Marriage, it fulfills a man's purpose, and in as much as he is more a man, the more he fulfills
Do you
his
think
purpose.
marriage is a man's purpose?
Man's ultimate purpose is to know God and to serve him in this world and enjoy him forever in eternity.
But so wouldn't be
But
marriage?
subsidiary aspects of that would be to get married, which is a symbol of Christ's love for his church, and even, taking
But I'm asking, like, can I get a yes or no? Do you think?
Well, I'm
it's a
trying to
man's-
explain
okay,
to
fine.
you, the answer to the question you're asking. But if you say, what's a man's purpose? And my purpose in this conversation is to talk to you.
Okay.
That's one purpose. A purpose is also to get to the nature of this question of marriage. Another purpose is to communicate that to the audience. So there are all sorts of purposes that we have. We have higher purposes and lower purposes. When you ask, is marriage part of a man's purpose? I say it is. It's not man's ultimate purpose.
Okay.
But it is a symbol of his ultimate purpose, and it is a constituent part of his purpose, and a natural end of his very nature. Men's masculinity and virility.
That gives you a little taste of how Michael Knowles approaches it. He argues with it. She pushes back and he says, I'm trying to tell you. I like when he calls, he says, anytime you ask the purpose of something, there are multiple levels and multiple purposes. And then he finally says it. What we're going to look at next week is about a 15-minute clip of him walking through biblically, why does it matter? All right, let's keep going. So now we have now set the stage. Are you all confused about what a woman is? And those of us who are not, well, we are, but a lot of it, if you don't pay attention to these issues and you kind of watch your own sort of narrow, and that's okay, your own narrow news and your own stuff like that, you may not realize this is completely dominating the culture right now, especially for the Gen Zers. What's that latest what's the latest generation? Z?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
That's
I
our
think we
kids.
already flipped back to A.
Our
Okay.
kids are Gen Z.
So this is completely dominating the Gen Z world right now. It's really all the way on back. And so
Would
the
you
boomers
say
in the
so?
room.
From a college campus, would you say so? Do you see that a lot?
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. So for the boomers in the room, it's, well, that's a stupid question. Any idiot knows what a woman is. I'm telling you, that is not a stupid question to this new generation. Not a stupid question at all. We are fully confused in this culture. Okay, why are these questions so hard to answer today? How did we get here? So today we're just laying out the problem. There are two problem areas. Number one is societal problem. Generally, there has been a significant loss of the biblical worldview in the culture at large. So look out over the last 50, 60 years. So I'm going to say that again. Generally, there has been a significant loss of the biblical worldview in the culture at large. Now, mind you, understand what I'm saying here. I'm not saying there's a reduction in the number of Christians. Probably hasn't been, because most people would find Christianity however they want to nowadays. What I'm saying is, when you look back to the 1940s and 50s and 60s, you could be a stone cold atheist, but you supported, in a sense, affirmed, and operated under a Christian worldview, regardless. That's completely gone now. Let's see. All right, the loss of a biblical worldview in the culture at large. We are witnessing the full bloom of a substitute secular worldview planted by secular materialists decades ago. Those with a biblical worldview retreated from all the major institutions. That means you, me, the church. We have retreated from the major institutions. Primary education, we've given it over to somebody else, or we send our kids to private schools. Media, we have completely ceded the institution of media. It's liberals, we'll just watch our own television or play Monopoly at home. We have ceded primary education, we have ceded the media, we have ceded entertainment. With a little bit of pushback from, say, Dallas Jenkins and The Chosen, which, by the way, is constantly attacked by the Christian church. And then we're like, whoa, we totally, completely ceded the media and entertainment to the liberal freaks of the world. Well, because as soon as a Christian stands up and we have one disagreement with them, we attack! Morons. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm talking about us. We set people up. What's the statement? This makes me so angry. We set people. How do Christians? What does a Christian firing squad look like? A circle. Golly. Okay. What have we done? The primary education, the media, entertainment, and universities. We have completely ceded all of the cultural institutions to the left. And we've hunkered down within our own communities and within our own churches, and we've shut our doors and just hope the rest of the world isn't going to hell. That describes the last 20, 30, 40 years, and it's steadily getting worse. That's why we're in the mess we're in. Okay, Christians hunkered down. I said that. Now, what's the second problem? The church problem. That's the cultural problem. We have long since given up, for the most part. Again, I'm talking in general. You'll find examples that are contrary, but in general, the church has given up in any effective way influencing the culture through the ceding of institutions to those who would not have a biblical worldview. Okay, now let's look at the church specifically, the church problem. The church itself has largely, this is the weird part, the church itself has largely lost a biblical worldview, resulting in a weak, impotent church. What? We're not defining the church as the biblical worldview and the culture as some secular worldview. No, I am not. I'm defining the culture as a secular worldview and the vast majority of your church as a secular worldview. We have the same worldview, the majority of us do. We have within the church is the same worldview as what's outside the church. I'm going to give you some stats on that. Rhetorical question, why is the church largely weak and impotent when it comes to these issues? Now, we're about to show you the results of some studies. You're holding them, that gray sheet in your hand. But before we do that, I wanted to define how did this simple research by Barna at the Arizona Cultural
Arizona Christian University,
which is where Barna's Institute is.
Cultural Research Center.
Right. He defined worldview this way. This is in your notes. For the purpose of the research, a biblical worldview was defined. I'm going to say this slowly. We shrunk it down into 6 simple statements here on the board. Here's what it is. Number 1, it's going to start with 3, and then it's going to give you the detailed 6. Number 1, this is what they ask people. Start with this. This is what they ask pastors. I want this in your head. This is what they ask pastors, the person standing in your pulpit preaching. They ask them this. Number 1, you believe that absolute moral truths exist. Pretty standard question. Number 2, that such truth is defined by the Bible. And then number 3, they said, you affirm and believe in 6 specific religious views. And this is what's on the board. So this is all they ask you. Do you believe that absolute moral truth exists? Do you believe that exists philosophically? And number 2, do you believe that the Bible defines those truths? Then he said, and you gotta affirm these 6 things, and here they are. Number 1, Jesus Christ lived a sinless life. Anybody in here disagree with that? Number 2, God is the all-powerful and all-knowing creator of the universe, and he still rules it today. That's the second one. They ask pastors this, I'm reminding y'all. Number 3, salvation is a gift from God and cannot be earned. Number 4, Satan is real. Number 5, a Christian has the responsibility to share their faith in Christ with other people. The Christian actually has to do the Great Commandment. And then number 6, the Bible is accurate in all of its teachings. That's it. They ask 6 fundamental issues among pastors. Anybody know, without looking at your sheet, how many pastors could not pass that? All right, let me tell you how many pastors had a Christian worldview which they could affirm those statements. 38%. 38% of the men, mostly men, 37, sorry. 37% of the men standing in your pulpits in supposedly Christian churches could not affirm those statements. That's a problem. That is a serious problem. Now, here's what's even worse. I'm doing all this off my memory, Mary. You correct me on this. What's worse? Guess what? Guess how your youth pastor scored, people? Was it 12? Is that what this last 12? Yeah. 12%. 12% of the people inside the church leading your children, 12% could affirm this. And so, what is that? 88% could not simply affirm this, and they're teaching your youth in the church.
And why does that matter according to Barna?
Yep, we're about to read it.
Hold that thought.
I know you're a Barna man.
Seminary problem? It's our seminary.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna be quiet now. You wanna read the American Worldview?
This is your statistics. We talked about it. I know. Okay, this is the actual study that Barna came out with and the data that he presents. So people have many expectations of pastors in Christian churches. One of those is that pastors possess a philosophy of life that largely reflects biblical principles, a perspective commonly called a biblical worldview. But a new nationwide study among a representative sample of America's Christian pastors shows that a large majority of these pastors do not possess biblical worldview. In fact, just slightly more than a third, 37%, have a biblical worldview, and the majority, 62%, possess a hybrid worldview known as syncretism. The new research findings come from this study that you're holding, and it was ministered to 1,000 Christian pastors to better understand the worldviews that drive their thinking and behavior. I'm just going to read what I've marked out here on the paper. So, pastors and their biblical worldview. Their prevailing worldview is best described as syncretism, which is the blending of ideas and applications from a variety of holistic worldviews into a unique but inconsistent combination that represents their personal preferences. More than 6 out of 10 pastors, 62%, have a predominantly syncretistic worldview.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it sound even worse. That's 37% who have a biblical worldview, and I would argue that the vast majority of them keep their mouth shut from the pulpit because of the push they're going to come back from the congregation or the external. So even the 37%, they pick 10 or 15 things that they simply never preach in the Bible. So they're just self-centered. So it's worse than 37%. They're self-centered.
So if you want to, yeah.
It's actually worse than what you're saying. It's actually 96%. You skipped the sentence where it says the lowest level of biblical worldview was among executive pastors. Our church, some of you remember, changed the bylaws after 170 years to be a CEO-run church, as well as First Richmond and First Madison. They're all CEO-run churches. What does that mean? That means that among this data, when Barna came out, that only 4% of CEO churches, run churches, have a consistent biblical worldview. What does that mean? That means 96%. Everybody attending those 3 local churches that are on the MC board believe that their pastors are in the 4%. Are in the 4%. There's a problem.
So look at the, if you want to look at the data, he's talking about the percentage of Christian pastors that possess a biblical worldview by their categories. The lead pastor, the associate pastor, teaching pastor, executive pastor, youth and children's pastors. One group, this is talking about a group in the general public, which I would consider us. Did you read this, Marshall? We're a SAGECOM. Spiritually active, governance engaged, conservative Christian. Would you say?
I didn't know I was a sage call. I have a new identity.
That's your title. I think that's your title.
No, I didn't see that part.
This is like lay people.
I don't like all these titles. You know what I am? I'm a representative of Jesus Christ. I don't care if I'm a Republican or a Democrat. I represent a monarchy. I'm waiting for a king to come back.
That's right.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So
I get so riled up about this, guys, because I'm sick of all the constant.
Are you passionate
I'm
about
sick
this?
of all the titles and everything's political. The fact that you want to stand up for the not murdering 65 million babies is somehow political. That blows my mind that we've got a culture that's convinced people of that. that's political. No, it's called murder. I mean, please. So that's why I'm sick of all this Republican, Democrat. I don't watch Fox News anymore because I'm sick of them too. I don't. I represent Jesus Christ. That's what I'm commanded to do. And it needs to be filtered through him and his worldview. And not the fake Jesus that we hear about, which we're not talking about.
Okay.
Which is what's inside this.
Yes.
The feminized, that's where we're going to go, y'all. It's going to be offensive.
Okay.
The feminized Jesus.
Okay, we got it. Okay, one group within the general public that is more likely to possess a biblical worldview than pastors are this self-identifying, sage, spiritually active, governance-engaged, conservative Christians. The inventory said that 46% of those have a biblical worldview, a full 9 percentage points higher than most than among pastors.
So what he's basically saying there is you're more likely to find a person with a biblical worldview in the pew than you are in the pulpit. Oh, that hurts.
So this sage group constitutes about 8% of the national adult population, and pastors of churches are less than 1% of the general public. Sage cons with a biblical worldview are roughly 10 times as numerous as Christian pastors with a biblical worldview.
That's
So
amazing.
you're dependent on those people, whoever they are, to be sharing what they believe about their biblical worldview. I'm going to turn to the next page. If you want to look at that chart, it tells you kind of what the questions were asked that identify their worldview. This list of beliefs came from Barna's website, but this is getting down in the weeds of what they asked them. I'm going to read from the Worldview Deficit in the Pulpits. During these challenging times in America, Christian churches have tremendous opportunities to influence our nation. However, when the worldview of the leaders, the pastors of most churches, is indistinguishable from that of non-believers, it is difficult to capitalize on those ministry opportunities. One of the more troubling revelations emerging from this research, according to George Barna, who's the director of research at the Cultural Research Center, is the worldview of pastors who work with young people. Garrett. Keep in mind, Barna cautioned, a person's worldview primarily develops before the age of 13.
That's the key here. We used to think that in the 80s it was those darn atheist professors. We need to teach our seniors right before they catch college because an atheist professor's going to steal their faith. Christians are always 20 years behind the battle. The battle had already been lost for them because it was already down into the high school. Then we started to realize, oh my gosh, we got all this crazy in the house school. We need to start teaching our 10th graders. Then we started to realize, again, the church is 20 years behind. So once we started gearing up for that, we've already lost that battle. It's down in the elementary school. That's why do you think these alternative lifestyles are demanding that they show up in the library and in preschool? Because they know the research better than you Christians do. They know that you've got to, the reason LGBT, lesbianism, all that kind of stuff was 2 to 3% of our population for the entire history of the nation. And now if you poll Generation Z, it's 38% of females, especially females, much higher with females than males. Why is that? Why is that? Because they've taken over media, they've taken over education, and they're pushing it down to the preschool level so you can grab them before the parents can indoctrinate them into Christianity. It's psychology, and it's very effective. And again, now we're fighting the battle 20 years behind.
So Barna says, keep in mind, a person's worldview is primarily develops before the age of 13, then goes through a period of refinement during their teens and 20s. From a worldview perspective, a church's most important ministers are the children's pastor and the youth pastor.
Isn't that interesting?
He continued, discovering that 7 out of 8 of those pastors lack a biblical worldview helps to explain why so few people in the nation's youngest generations are developing a heart and mind for biblical principles and ways of life, and why our society seems to have run wild over the last decade in particular.
And what does the corporate church do now? The corporate church looks at youth pastorship as nothing more than the young guy's experiencing his feet and kind of experiments with things on his way to becoming a real pastor, a senior pastor. Youth pastor is nothing more from the vast majority of them as the first stepping stone to get through the English so that they can then get to be a real pastor.
So Barna says this is another strong piece of evidence that the culture is influencing the American church more than Christian churches are influencing the culture. The research indicates that Americans are more likely to experience a positive impact on their worldview by hanging out with sage cons than they are by being in the presence or under your teaching of your pastors. He did offer a note of hope in spite of the data. You cannot fix something unless you know it's broken, he commented. Other research recently we have conducted suggests more pastors believe they are theologically in tune with the Bible. Perhaps these findings will cause many of them to take a careful look at how well their beliefs and behavior conform to biblical purposes and commands. God is in the transformation business. Pastors who are willing to allow him to transform their thinking and behavior can emerge from that process as a powerful example of what can happen when one's heart, mind, and soul are surrendered to God. It certainly seems that if America is going to experience a spiritual revival, that awakening is needed just as desperately in our pulpits as in the pews.
Wow. So that's the study, that's the situation. We're painting a really dark picture, aren't we? That's the situation we're in. It's just reality. It's time we quit playing around with all this stuff and realize, okay, there is a reason why when you turn your news on, your culture has gone to hell in a handbasket. It didn't happen yesterday. It didn't happen because Bill Clinton was elected or because this person didn't do his job or that Supreme Court justice got there. Now it's Biden's fault. No. It's been going on for many, many years because Christians did not do their job. That's why I remember getting in an argument with my own mother one time. I told her, I said, it's your fault. I was a teenager. I said, it's your fault. She was, what are you talking about? And I told her, I said, because all this started back, my mom was much older, so she was born in 1930. My mom's not, most people my age have mothers that are probably about 20 years younger. I was the youngest of 6, and she spread that out over 20 years. So my mom was actually one more generation behind most people my age. And I laughed, I told her, I said, it's your fault. My whole concept was, as you start looking back at the history, and it's the 40s, 50s, 60s, and what was going on through all that, and just the constant, okay, I'm gonna be quiet.
Okay. Why men hate going to church. This is the author writing the introduction. April 27, 2007, I was the keynote speaker for the Presbyterian Church, USA, men's churchwide gathering in Louisville, Kentucky.
So they did. So he's like fired up. He's the what? What is he?
The
keynote speaker of this whole. It's like the Southern Baptist Convention.
Churchwide gathering. So all of the United States in Louisville, Kentucky. I'd been invited to speak about my new book, Why Men Hate Going to Church, the first edition. I was hoping for a good crowd. The PCUSA, though in decline, still had more than 2.6 million members. More than 3,000 Presbyterian women had just wrapped up their gathering in Louisville.
The thing is, so the women, there were 3,000 Presbyterian women there.
I arrived the morning of April 27th and walked down to the banquet hall where I was to speak. I entered the room and did a double take.
What?
It was tiny, with seating for fewer than 100. I checked the sign on the door, 2,000 Presbyterian men's churchwide gathering. I was in the right place. Final score, Presbyterian women, 3,000 plus, Presbyterian men, 88.
88 showed up. We laugh, but you know it, even in a more, probably I would argue the Southern Baptist or at the, it hasn't affected us as much, but I mean, it's obvious. You look at our own churches, especially if you've been in the Southern Baptist for any length of time, you see that steady decline of male leadership and male participation. Was that it on that?
Yeah.
So again, we're just setting the tone. We're giving you all the problem and depression until next week. Okay, now what?
Now, how churches drive boys away from the faith.
Again, we're only going to give you a little snippet of all this right now.
To be continued.
And again, we're looking at men and women. What are the differences? Okay, let's listen to this.
I was just going to paint just a slightly darker picture as far as we get mad at we get mad at the politics because it's all the politics of the president's fault and all that, like you said. Then we get mad at the church. But where the most fundamental building block of who does this fall on? The families. Why do all these pastors not have biblical worldviews? Because their parents didn't teach it. We can't, the church is supplemental to the family. And that's where
The first institution created was not the church, it was the family. Yeah, I agree. And the command for people is not community. That drives me insane. We constantly go, community. No, your community is your family.
We tried to outsource discipleship and it doesn't.
I agree.
That's good.
Let's say that again.
We try to outsource discipleship.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, boys like men are visual creatures.
Just kind of listen, especially you boys in the room, and tell me if this, the men in the room, the men in the room, tell me if this rings true to y'all.
Boys like men are visual creatures. They believe what they see. Unfortunately, the Jesus they see in church and Sunday school is warping their impression of God.
what freaked me out about what she was saying is I'm just old enough that I remember this transition to images of Jesus. The younger generation that I am, you won't even probably remember this, doesn't ring true to you, but I remember this transition.
Traditional holy pictures portray Jesus as thin, pale, and soft, with long flowing tresses caressing an androgynous face. This Jesus bears little resemblance to the rugged Judean carpenter who possessed the strength to drive out the money changers with a whip. Catholic boys meet Jesus at his weakest moment, half dead, stripped, head down, and nailed to a cross. Meanwhile, the female icon, the Blessed Virgin, always looks healthy, calm, and serene. But the old holy pictures did get one thing right. They showed Jesus as a man of action, working in the company of men.
This is the part I can remember that when I was in like elementary preschool, the pictures of Jesus, it always showed him as a carpenter. I remember, I can see him in my mind, image of him with Joseph being carpenter, and he was usually with his disciples. You never see that image anymore.
Sure, they wore robes and had long flowing hair, but at least they had beards. In the 1980s, y'all remember this, a Sunday school curriculum publisher decided to do some market research. He discovered that most of his product was purchased by married, middle-aged women.
As a researcher, I got to sell my product, and he discovered through his research that married, middle-aged women were his customer.
So he asked these ladies what they disliked about traditional curriculum. They spoke with one voice: the pictures. They thought that Christ seemed frightening and unkind. Instead, they preferred to see pictures of a friendly Jesus doing fun things, preferably smiling with children on his lap.
Which is exactly what you see now. You look through any of these preschool things, it's Jesus holding children in his lap. But keep going.
The publisher immediately called in his artists and ordered them to give Jesus a makeover. Out went the somber Nazarene in the company of men, replaced by a happy Jesus loving children. The new Jesus was an instant hit. Women rushed to purchase this updated curriculum. Soon, every Sunday school publisher had remade Jesus into a smiling Jewish camp counselor.
I love that, a smiling Jewish camp counselor. That is exactly what those images look like.
But there was a problem with the new Jesus. He took whippishness to a new level, particularly when you compare him to the tough guys that boys idolize. The male action heroes of popular entertainment are hyper-masculine, scowling, and filthy, with sweat shining off their bulging muscles. Meanwhile, the new Jesus looked as if he'd just come from a spa treatment. Once again, modern marketing created a Jesus who does not exist. The true Christ of Scripture is more akin to a gritty superhero. As a homeless man, he was no stranger to sweat and grime. As a tradesman, he must have been well muscled. Like a video game hero, Jesus was a fighter who left a trail of mayhem in his wake. He vanquished demons, destroyed stuff, and made people so mad they tried to kill him. Camp counselors don't get nailed to crosses.
That's a great statement. Camp counselors don't get nailed to crosses. Wow.
Not only was the new Jesus sissy, but most of his new illustrations placed him in the presence of children. And what's wrong with that?
This is a cool psychological view of how men see children. Well, how a male sees children when they become a male after adolescence.
And what's wrong with that? Nothing, as long as you also show Jesus among men. But over the past 20 years, Jesus and the children imagery has come to dominate Sunday school curriculum. In the lower grades, it's practically the only picture of Christ that children see. All these pictures of the Messiah chilling with children have created an unbreakable subconscious link between Christ and the childhood in the mind of boys. As young men mature and think of Jesus, their mind's eye recalls those images of him with little ones. The time bomb is planted.
I like the time bomb is planted. Not for the women per se, he's going to mention it, but for the men, the time bomb is planted. Because it's planted how the male perceives Jesus.
When a boy reaches puberty, desperate to become a man, the bomb explodes. A voice in his head says, Christ is for children. I'm no longer a child. Therefore, I must rid myself of Christ. We have an epidemic of young men leaving the faith, not because they disbelieve, but because they perceive Christ to be a pansy and church to be a symbol of childhood. Clever marketing has done its damage. By catering to the women who buy curriculum, publishers have unwittingly sabotaged the faith of young men. Girls are largely unaffected because they never reject their childhoods
I
the
love this
way
imagery.
boys do.
The imagery it's about to give you, you know this. It's like, yeah, I guess that's true. Listen to this.
It's not uncommon for a 17-year-old girl to display stuffed animals, dolls, and baby pictures in her room.
A boy would not be found dead with their stuffed animals still in the room. What's he doing? He said, I'm becoming a man. I'm leaving my childhood stuff. That's how a man thinks. And a woman doesn't necessarily. I thought that, and I didn't know this. Meredith reread this to me. I'm like, that's exactly how we think.
17-year-old boys never do this. Every young man comes to the day when he puts away childish things. And thanks to the way we portray Jesus in Sunday school, Christ has become a childish thing. The real tragedy is not that we're losing boys, we are losing the most competitive, aggressive boys.
That is so true. That is critical. It's not just that we're losing boys, we're losing the most competitive, the most aggressive, the very ones you need to fight battles with.
High testosterone boys destined to be leaders and innovators are checking out of the church at a young age. Worldly temptations play a role, to be sure, but many disengage simply because of the way we raise them in the faith. They cannot compete in Sunday school, so they drop out. We teach them Christ is for children, so they drop out. Let's stop there.
I thought, wait, where's the one where it said, where was it where it said?
We're not there yet.
Oh, there's some more good stuff.
There's more.
There's a lot of good stuff in here. All right, are we where we're supposed to
make
be?
a comment. I'm just thinking about this, going back and thinking, okay, I grew up in the 60s. I can remember getting my first Bible, and I can remember opening it up and seeing Jesus driving those guys out of the temple. And I mean, I was drawn to that. I thought, man, I just can just, before I was even saved, that just drew me to him because I saw a strong Jesus, not some, and I'm just saying me at my age at that time, I don't know where it's progressed now, but I'm just thinking for me, opening up my first Bible and seeing the Bible I got, and I just can remember that just drew me to Christ.
Yeah.
So let me read the high testosterone Jesus version in the Bible. We can all go to the picture of come, let the little children come to me, and Jesus is having the children in his lap. That's easy to find. But let's go to Revelation 19, verse 11. Then I saw heaven opened, and here came a white horse, the one riding with it called Faithful and True. And with justice he judges and goes to war. His eyes are like a fiery flame, and there are many diadem crowns on his head. He has a name written that no one knows except himself. He is dressed in clothing dipped in blood, and he is called the Word of God. The armies that are in heaven, dressed in white, clean, fine linen, were following him on white horses. From his mouth extends a sharp sword, so that with it he can strike the nations. He will rule them with an iron rod, and he stomps the winepress of the furious wrath of God the All-Powerful. He has a name written on his clothing and on his thigh, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Then I saw one angel standing in the sun and shouted in a loud voice to all the birds flying high in the sky, "Come, gather around for the great banquet of God, to eat your fill of the flesh of kings, the flesh of generals, the flesh of powerful people, the flesh of horses, and those who ride them, and the flesh of all people, both free and slave, and small and great." And then I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies assembled to do battle with the one who rode the horse and his army. Now the beast was seized, and along with him the false prophet who had performed the signs on his behalf, signs with which he deceived those who had received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. I think I've read more than enough. And both of them were thrown alive into the lake of fire, burning with sulfur.
See, Jesus came the first time as the suffering servant. He comes next time, the second time, as the conquering king. It is that conquering king and that we're demanded to give our believing loyalty. That's why I always use that word. Men understand loyalty. Men understand, not that women don't, but that's what, it's King Arthur. It's King Arthur, it's loyalty. It's giving your life for a cause bigger than yourself. That's what the whole biblical narrative is. Maybe we should get to that.
Have you ever heard Revelation 19 Christian Church?
There's too much imagery, it's so confusing, I can't possibly figure this out. Skip. Yep.
I don't know if y'all, I mean, we might have to stop again.
Yeah, we gotta stop.
But I don't know if y'all feel the same way as a woman, you women. but if you have men in your life and you have boys at your house, you understand. And the more I read about Sunday school, and we know our kids have trouble in school, sitting still and fidgeting. They talk about that in this book. Little boys need to be active. They need to get that energy out, and that's how they learn. You know, all these studies about separating boys from girls in school, because girls mature faster, they read faster, they do fine motor skills faster, and boys need to learn by being active. And my boys will sit around our kitchen table and talk about Sunday school when Rob Ward would bring in his shield and sword to Sunday school class and talk about doing battle with the sword of the Spirit.
Because it's visual and it's movement and it's active. And I'll say it's.
They remember the teachings from that, Rob Ward.
Do you know what my oldest son, who is an intern at City Church, do you know what his curriculum planning is each week? Every single week he does this. It's the most beautiful thing. We'll be headed to City Church in a minute. Oh, it's raining outside. We may not see it today. And after church, here's what's happening. When you go outside of church, you look back there. It's my son, usually my second son, and several other adults. And you know what they're doing in the field behind the church? Right in the middle of Sunday school, we would throw these jokers right out of our church. They're playing football. They're playing football. Here's what he does. He brings them under, he puts them under a tree, and he gives them a deep theological. My son teaches some serious stuff. I'm thinking, you're teaching like 9 to 11-year-olds.
Yeah.
But you know what? It lasts 12 to 14 minutes when they play football. You know what's going on at that church? There are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of little boys. And it's the only thing they're like. They will listen, they will be quiet, they will hear about these, they will die how they want to play football. And that's the whole way that they've developed this entire group of young men, young African-American men at 12, 13, 14 years old. Dozens of them.
Jumping up and begging for attention.
Begging for the attention
from those boys.
It's amazing when you just sit there. We sit in the car a lot of times just watching. You know.
We were talking to Will about this last night, and he said, yeah, and they usually say, no girls allowed.
Yeah, we have to.
No girls
can play football with us.
So.
Well, I won't say that. We'll pick this up. We didn't even get to a good video from Jordan Peterson. There's a great Jordan, it's a 12-minute video. Jump in there, Candace.
Well, when I took Ezra down to Sunday school class, there was like 10 girls, and he was the only boy. And as soon as he walked in, the girls started chanting, "No boys allowed." And then I was like, "That's funny you said that."
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Y'all saw, I think, they changed Boy Scouts now.
That was this week. Scouting.
They do
Scouts of America.
Oh,
I'm so glad
I
we're
did hear
doing.
that.
I did not know that.
I did hear that.
You did the scouting here.
All right.
You just identify as a boy, or you don't even have to.
You don't have to do that anymore.
Just merge two groups. Yeah. All right, well, today we gave you the problem. Next week we're going to deal more in the theology. We're going to hear more, okay, what does the Bible say? And then we're going to give you some more issues with the problem. I can't believe we didn't get any further.
I know.
But you can see why I've been struggling with this, because I'm struggling because it's very easy for a teacher to define problems. What's hard is to go, what do you do about it? And that's what I've been struggling with, but we've got some answers. We'll hit those next week.
You can catch the Jordan Peterson video next week.
Oh yeah. Oh, we're gonna pick right up with Jordan Peterson. He just does. And I'm so confused about Jordan Peterson, y'all. Golly, I struggle with whether he's a Christian, whether he's not, what kind of Christian, what he is. I'm so confused with poor old Jordan
But he
Peterson.
thinks well.
But man, does he think well. And so
And he respects the Bible, at least we know that.
Oh, definitely. That's all he talks about. All right, I'll raise that here. Dear Lord, thank you so much. Thank you for letting us tackle some of these kind of just hard issues, Lord. I pray that in everything we do and say that you're glorified, you're honored, and that you would give us a properly ordered view of humanity. Say that again, God, you created us. You gave us the proper order. And we're just so stupid that we reject your proper order all the time. Maybe we capture your ordered culture, your ordered meaning for our life, and maybe we live it. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. All right, we'll pick up next week.